Welcome along to Mexico City for round 2 of season 12 of the ABB FIA Formula E World Championship. We're in the sunshine, however, it's still relatively early in the morning, 20 to 10 local time here in Mexico, and it's still quite cool as a result of that. However, times have been very fast this weekend at the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez, courtesy of a bit of a track change. Gone is the chicane at turn 8. Subsequently, the lap time's about 5 seconds or so faster than we had here 12 months ago. And keen to see how this one is going to work out. If we look back to Sao Paulo, we saw Pascal Wehrlein taking pole position, but not starting on pole. He wheel span in the pit lane in the dual stages of qualifying, subsequently was given a 3-place penalty and ended up starting in 4th position. The upshot is Dennis started on pole, he went on to win the race, and your championship leader lines up in Group A with Nick Cassidy, Nico Muller, Joel Eriksson, Nick De Vries, Antonio Felix da Costa, Taylor Barnard, John-Eric Byrne, Eduardo Mortara, and also Norman Nato. So quite a few teams there, Karun, with 2 cars in this first session.
Yeah, indeed. Very early stages of this year's World Championship, of course, and the orders and the grouping is done based on the points. We've only had one race weekend, so we'll have an even split in terms of potential heavy hitters who can get pole.
Yeah, and of course group stages of qualifying now, James, for season 12, reduced from 12 minutes down to 10 minutes. We're expecting it to just be a one run. Drivers going out of the pit lane, and that's the only time they'll be out.
Yeah, especially with the cold temperatures that we're seeing here today. I don't think the drivers are going to have the ability to get the temperature in their tyres, then come in, do a pit stop and change to the other set. So we're going to see one long run. I guess they're going to do 2 or 3 build-up laps to build some temperature in, and then they really have to nail their lap in 300 kilowatts.
And if you're new to Formula E and haven't watched a qualifying session before, welcome, first of all. You've got 2 different power modes, effectively, in this part of qualifying. So, not in this part. In this part, you've got one power mode, 300 kilowatts, and only 2-wheel drive. When we get to the dual stages, they get an extra 50 kilowatts, but also 4-wheel drive. Now, the effect of that is, at this stage, they've only got the power going through the rear axle, so it's actually quite hard to get the energy into the front tyres and try and get the heat into the front tyres. And that's why, to James's point, they'll take a few laps to just build up that temperature before they really start attacking for a push lap.
And this man, Antonio Felix da Costa, got no running at all in that FP2 session due to an issue with his car, so he's really on the back foot heading into here.
Yeah, not ideal at all for Antonio Felix da Costa after a disappointing end to Sao Paulo as well, where he was clattered into the back of by Pepe Marti, brought out the red flag, and subsequently, of course, da Costa then starting from the back of the grid for the restarted race, and a difficult day at the office on his Jaguar debut. Speaking to Albi Lau prior to the start of this session, our strategist on the ground, and he reckons there's going to be about 2 or 3 build laps, then we'll see push laps, a couple of them in this session.
So if you want to overtake any car in front, feel free to do so. Just work on your brakes and tires plan as discussed.
And traffic is going to be an issue here, isn't it? We saw it all through free practice yesterday and this morning, where you get bunched up. You get a concertina effect in the stadium area that they're going into. You look at the driver tracker. We've got a gaggle of cars, haven't we? 7 of them all in that stadium. And then there's a group of 3 cars who've sort of hung back a bit. You've got Nick Cassidy, his DS teammate, or Citroen teammate I should say now, Jean-Eric Byrne, and there's another one back there. Nico Muller, yeah. So there's 3 of them who are probably about 15 seconds offset.
Yeah, we saw it in practice, didn't we? Especially in the stadium section, because you can see where the circuit's at the top of your screen. It goes back on itself. It's so blind going through there. There's a real reliance on the engineer giving you the information to know to get out of the way if you're on a slower lap.
It is so difficult, though, to get your car out of the way and not impede another driver. We saw it quite a lot in FP1 and FP2, people getting penalties and getting a little bit of trouble for that. So, yeah, they need to leave a little bit of a space between the cars, and I think it's quite smart of the 2 Citroen cars to have a bit of a gap there.
Well, drivers are out on track at the moment doing the build laps, as you can see. Let's go down and talk to Albi about what we're expecting for this session in terms of getting the tyres up to temperature. What can you tell us, Albi?
Yeah, it's still super difficult. I mean, it's only got to about 20 degrees track temp, which is, definitely a lot more than this morning, but it's still going to be about 3 warm-up laps. The difficulty really is getting those right-hand side tires warm. You've only got turn 3 and the stadium section, and I'm with Karun. I don't know why all these cars are bunching themselves up. They're going to really struggle trying to warm up their right-hand side tires through the stadium when they're that close to each other. And then when they start their push laps, if they get in each other's way, again, the tires are just cooling down. And then by the time you get to turn 1, you got no temperature in your right-hand tires. So they need to spread themselves out a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, Albi, I think the point is, I don't get why someone hasn't just waited 30 seconds and just given yourself a nice clean gap to do stuff, because it's about, these build laps are doing 1 minute and 15. So if you waited 30-40 seconds, you'll have a nice clean run, and instead you're not able to do your preparation the pace you want.
You've got 2 more after this one. 3 in total. 2 more and this one.
So you can see that's the conversation back and forth there. Sorry, beg your pardon. Carry on, Albie.
No, it's one of those things where they're going to get probably 2 push laps. So depending on the team and how they want to split the time between those 2 push laps, they may do a single cool lap in between, maybe 2. That's the only reason I could think about them wanting to push out early rather than waiting 30 seconds. But I'm with Karun. If it was me, I would definitely give our drivers the most track to be able to warm the tires up properly. That's way more important.
So I see a couple of drivers now coming in with some quicker sector times, aren't we here? We're just looking at John-Eric Verne on the timing screen. He's lit up the first sector. He's, a couple of seconds quicker than anybody else we've seen so far in the session?
It's in the ballpark, I think, from what we saw this morning, that the 23 seconds for the first sector.
Yeah, that's right. 23.0 sector 1. He seems to be the only one, though, who is pushing on. Nato, still 1:13. That's a good 3-4 seconds off so far. So we'll see what John-Eric Verne does. He's coming through the final corner at the moment.
But they're putting a lot of pressure on themselves here, because they're still in a bit of a gaggle, and they're going to have to nail a lap right at the end of this session. And if the car in front makes a mistake, it's going to be a bit of a problem.
Just looking at the 300 kilowatt laps from this morning, we're sort of around the 1 minute 6s, sort of mid to high 1 minute 6s is what we should be expecting that to be. I'm sure Google Gemini will come along with what the cut-off point is as the session evolves, but you can see we've only got 4 minutes left, so there's not actually that much time, relatively speaking, to get these lap times coming in, and I'm sure drivers will now be beginning to start to push on a bit more.
Yeah, you can see the body language of the car there, there's a bit more chirping from the tyres you can hear as they come through that double right-hander of turn 5, and that's a sign, an indication that drivers are leaning on the front tyre just a bit more and starting to push a bit.
Yeah, just looking here then at Norman Nato as he makes his way through the Peraltada. Here are the team principals in the pit box at the moment. You'll notice a special livery on the Porsche this weekend. That's in homage to the La Carrera Panamericana race across Mexico, 75th anniversary of that one. So the car looking a little bit different compared to what we have seen. But you can see here Oliver Norman Nato right up on the dust on the outside and getting wide at the first corner too.
I noticed Taylor Barnard's gone through the pit lane. I don't know if he actually stopped in the box, but I wondered if that was a tactic from DS Penske to try and get out of the traffic train and drop him to the back of the queue and get a bit of a gap.
Either that, or they might have adjusted tyre pressures.
Maybe, yeah.
I guess they can do that. If you start with a higher tyre pressure, build a bit more temperature, and then drop it, and then go for your push-up.
Well, you can see Nato here. He's sort of in no man's land in terms of everybody else on track. He's got a nice clear track in front of him. Nobody else really to worry about. Hasn't been the tidiest of lap times, but it will be a good benchmark to see sort of where we're expecting the times in this session to go. As we said, around the sort of mid to high 1 minute 6s is what we were expecting after free practice 2 this morning, albeit the circuit was a little bit cooler in terms of the air and track temperatures at that point. A little bit later on now this morning, it's going to be ramping up both in terms of pace and in terms of temperatures. But let's see what the first relative lap time is going to be in this session here for Norman Nato in the Nissan as he comes to the line. It's a 1:06.6, so exactly in the ballpark that we were expecting. Jake Dennis, about who won in Sao Paulo last time out, he betters that time and goes to the top of the pile, with Da Costa slogging himself into second as well.
Yeah, Cassidy's on a good lap at the moment, as is Nico Muller. So they're all pushing on at this stage. Da Costa's gone third fastest in the Jaguar, but across the line comes the Mahindra. Edo Mortara now second. Oh, beaten by Nico Muller. So, yeah, laps coming thick and fast on.
Certainly are, yeah. And you can see the cut-off point there, around a 1 minute 6 at this particular point. So drivers will get a maximum of 2 laps left in this session. But what you generally see in these group stages of qualifying, they'll go out, they'll do a push lap, they'll cool it down for 1, maybe 2 laps, get one final bite at the cherry, won't they, to get through to the end of the session and give them a final chance of getting into the duels.
They're all going to have only 1 lap left after this, but there's only 1/10 covering the top 6 cars, and only 4 of them will advance to the duels.
There is Tommaso Volpe for Nissan, of course the winners here 12 months ago. An amazing race from the reigning world champion Oliver Rowland, who came through when there was a late race safety car. He still had a bit of attack mode left and got himself up past the 2 Porsches who were set for a victory in that race. It was amazing how quickly it turned on its head. But now, 1 minute left then in Group A. Dennis, Muller, Mortara, Da Costa, currently your quickest drivers at the moment. Keep an eye out for Taylor Barnard. He was pretty handy in practice too this morning. Third quickest right at the very end of the session. If he can pull a lap time like that out of this stage of qualifying, we could see him on for his first appearance in the dual stages this season.
So Nick Cassidy's lap time has been deleted for track limits, which means he does not have a time on the board. So he needs a big lap here for Nick Cassidy.
Yeah, that's disappointing for him, especially after the end of FP2 he had this morning. He was remonstrating with Lucas Di Grassi out on track, and both also in the pit lane afterwards as well. So let's see how this one is going to work out for Norman Nato through the first sector. He's a 10th up on where he was last time around. Jake Dennis also making some improvements. The track you can see is really evolving at the end of this session. You can see the car pitching there as we go into turn 9.
Oh, he caught a lot of that inside curve. That chucked the rear of the car slightly out of line, so I don't know if that's cost him a little bit of lap time. We'll have a look. In the middle sector, still strong, but lots of other people doing good laps as well.
Yeah, checker flag is now out, so this is the final run in this session. Nato's going to be the first driver across that line, but could that leave him vulnerable if those behind are going to be making improvements at the end of this session? Let's see what the score on the door is going to be for Norman Nato. He's currently 5th fastest outside of the dual stages. It'll elevate him up. Is it enough to get through into the duals, though? It's not. He misses out by 15/100ths of a second. Jake Dennis also fails to improve, backs out of that lap time. Da Costa likewise not making any improvements. So personal best sector times were coming in sort of the first and second sector, but nothing really to write home about for quite a few of the drivers. De Vries also missing the cut there as well.
And Barnard's the one to watch because
he's done it. Third quickest, Taylor Barnard. What about Nick Cassidy as well? We know that lap time was deleted. Muller consolidates himself with second. Jean-Eric Verne across the line in the Citroen. He's only 7th quickest, Cassidy, and he's only, again, 7th quickest just in front of his teammate. So that's an absolute shocker for the two Citroens, not getting through out of Group A and into the dual stages of qualifying. So your top 4, Jake Dennis, Nico Muller, Taylor Barnard and Eduardo Mortara.
2 Porsche powertrains, 2 fastest in the groups.
Yep, exactly what we were expecting to see. That's disappointing for Da Costa, but I have to say, given the lack of running that he had in FP2...
I think that was very impressive what Da Costa managed to deliver, having missed the entire FP2 session.
Beautifully done. Fourier, so he has. Oh, super goal towards the goal. Three times already in his young career. Place it. Oh, doesn't he do that? Come on with the big moments.
Bundesliga live di iNews Premium Sport.
Audisi online Cahaya Muda Indonesia dibuka. Daftarkan dirimu segera. Download dan kunjungi aplikasi RCTI Plus Super App. Lalu klik icon Hot Plus. Klik banner audisi online Cahaya Muda Indonesia. Baca syarat dan ketentuan dan klik link pendaftaran. Isi data dirimu dan upload fotomu. Kirim dan tunggu pengumumannya. Jadilah dai muda dan daftarkan dirimu sekarang.
What we saw with the 3 build laps that we saw in the first part of the session, doesn't it?
But I think that's the information for the second group, right? Is maybe they didn't need 3 build laps. If you have clear, and that's my point, you know, by going through the pits, they put him out of traffic. He was able to prepare the tyres in the way he wanted to, get it in the right window for that, you know, for the crucial push lap.
Well, qualifying Group A is completed then. Jake Dennis, winner from Sao Paulo, ahead of Nico Muller, his former teammate. Taylor Barnard pops himself into 3rd ahead of Mortara. Da Costa, Nato, Cassidy, Verne, Ericsson and Nick De Vries all missing out on a step into the duels here today for qualifying. Really disappointing session there for both Citroen and also for Nick De Vries especially as well, given the pace that we've seen from the Mahindra team, and also on the other side, even in that session, for Eduardo Mortara in particular. You can see the fans there watching on here in the stands. They're looking forward to a 36 lapper this afternoon. And, well, Nick Cassidy, I'm sure, will be doing some debriefing after that session, the Kiwi. We'll wait and see what the outcome of that is for that team and how they can turn things around. So Nick Cassidy out of qualifying then in Group A. I have to say, despite everything, he seems pretty calm. A little smile on his face there as well. As Antonio Felix da Costa just giving a few handshakes to his Jaguar team there. Really strong session regardless of the result. Not quite enough for him to get through into the duels, but if you consider he had a problem with the battery this morning in qualifying, sorry, in FP2, I beg your pardon, to get through into qualifying and qualify as well as he did, that is a very strong result, as we say, for the Portuguese former world champion. Albie, we saw Taylor Barnard getting himself through and into the dual stages of qualifying. What do you make of that one there for the young Briton, for DS Penske?
Yeah, so what DS has done there is a little bit different. So what they would have done is sent Taylor out and come back into the garage and then sided the tires. So remember what I told you before about how it's really difficult to get the right-hand tires up to temperature. So what they've done is gone out, done 3 laps, come in, swap the tires left to right, and then go back out for another 2 push laps. And that's why he was the only one able to actually improve on his last lap. But obviously with the operational requirements, it's always a little bit more difficult, but DS did a good job there.
Thank you very much, Albie. Yeah, really good job there for DS and for Taylor Barnard. Group B, out on track then. Oliver Rowland, Pepe Marti, Max Günther, Mitch Evans, Lucas de Grassi, Sebastian Buemi, Zane Maloney, Felipe Drugovich, Dan Ticktum, and also Pascal Wehrlein, the former 4-time pole sitter here at this circuit. Porsche very much in control of the results of this track. Bit of housekeeping to do though prior to Group B lap times coming in. So Pepe Marti, regardless of what happens, he'll be starting from the back of the grid. That's a legacy of the crash that we saw in Sao Paulo. He also has now got a stop and go penalty because they were changing the power unit prior to the start of this session. Got no running in FP2 this morning. Felipe Drugovich also out in Group B. He's got a 3-position grid penalty for overtaking under a full course yellow in Sao Paulo as well. And so 2 drivers there with a lot of work to do come the E-Prix this afternoon, because there's a lot of emphasis when it comes to qualifying. But Group B now out on track, and we'll see. We saw, of course, quite a few build laps, drivers getting heat into the tyres for a good portion of that session. It wasn't really until the second half when we saw the lap times beginning to...
So you know the sequence, focus on the brakes and tyres.
So focusing on the brakes and tyres there for Oliver Rowland. Do you think we're going to be set to see the same thing there, Karun, where we saw as many build laps, or do you think they're going to try and do something a little bit different like we saw with Taylor Barnard?
I think we'll wait to see, because the temperature on track is also rising. Right? You know, if you look at where it was at the start of the session, it'll creep up a degree or 2 as well, so they'll need to keep an eye on that. I think more people will think about the tyre swap though, and also just getting out of sync on traffic. I really think, you know, in Formula E, it's so tricky, especially on the braking, with all the systems to get it right in the sweet spot. You do need to have the confidence that the tyres are in the right window, and having that ability to prep the tyres and have them in the right window without this mess of other people around you is beneficial. So I'm interested to see if other people think of what DS Penske thought of there with Taylor Barnard.
I'm quite surprised that he's the only one to take that option, because you can swap the tyres from the left side to the right side. So in his first runs, he was putting a lot of temperature in that front left. You swap them over, suddenly your front right's fully in the correct window. You build your temperature now in the cooler front left, and then you should have a better balance to really go for that push on the attack lap. And that's why Taylor managed to capitalise on it and get himself through with ultimately the same car that Nick Cassidy and Jean-Eric Vergne couldn't deliver on.
Yeah, but I mean, it has to be said that, you know, at the end of the day, there were 2 cars ahead of him who didn't do that. So I don't, you know, I think that there's...
But they're Porsche powertrain,
yeah,
which I think are a bit stronger than his powertrain at this circuit.
Yeah, fair enough. I think so much of it comes down to driver confidence and sort of preference in terms of getting the prep right. So we'll see. Dan Ticktum, I'm interested to see how he gets on here, because he obviously started from the front row in the first round in Sao Paulo. It was unlucky. There's Idris Elba. Now, Sir Idris Elba, I believe, isn't he?
I believe you could be correct.
Yeah.
Nice to see him here. I think it's on its way. It's not at the ceremony yet, but it's coming in the post. Anyway, good to see him here this weekend. I have to say that just on the point of Dan Ticktum, he's not looked the same Dan Ticktum that we've seen so far this season, and this weekend he's just looked a little bit at sea. I wonder as to why that is, because we see the Porsche powertrain is quick. We know that Porsche powertrain's in the back of that Cupra Kiro, but the results haven't particularly reflected what we're used to seeing for the Briton.
No, and also I think the fact that Pepe Marti missed all of this morning's practice session means the teams got less data, less information to go on. Here, look, DS Penske doing, I suspect, the tyre swap again. And as far as I can see, no one else is in the pit lane. So let's keep an eye on this. This is Maxi Gunther in the other DS Penske. There we go. And they're just doing it on the front. So as I was saying before, it's the front tyres which are really a challenge in this group stage, because it's only two-wheel drive. You've only got the power going through the rear. So the challenge is getting temperature in the fronts. And no one else. And I think if anyone else is now thinking about it, are they doing the rears as well? Okay. They are doing both sides.
The only issue with this strategy is it does potentially limit you to only one push lap, which...
Yeah, and if you get a yellow flag or a red flag, that's where you get into trouble. So it is a potentially riskier strategy with just 5 minutes or just under 5 minutes on the clock. I don't think anyone else will do this now. So he's going to head out, but on track, Tom, the sectors are going to start falling pretty quickly.
Yeah, Gunther is the only driver to be in the pit lanes. Everybody else is carried on, as you can see with the tower graphic on the left-hand side of your screen. Just a point to make on Mitch Evans, who's out in this session, by the way. I went down to the Jaguar garage right before the start of this session, and there was a flurry of activity. The car was not in bits, but there was a very state of sort of disassembly, as it were, because they were changing bits of setup. And I went down to talk to his race engineer, Alan Cox. I said, "Is everything all right? You know, have you got a problem?" Like,
okay, Seb, we have one more prep lap ahead. One more prep lap ahead.
But he just said, no, we've been changing the car and making sure that we've got the right setup going into qualifying, because they know how much emphasis there is on qualifying here in Mexico City. If you remember back to Sao Paulo, it's a circuit where overtaking is quite plentiful. Here in Mexico, it's a little bit harder, so being in that sort of top half of the grid is really important.
Yeah, here in Mexico City, you're going to have to make some bold moves, I think, in the race to get the overtakes done. So you really want to be in the dual phase and really aiming to start this race in the top 6.
Right, here we go. This is going to be the first of the push laps in Group B.
Setting himself up here for a nice exit.
Max, just make sure you're in mode FP1. Everything went okay here, and we're going to go for out, push, go push. Expect you to be in sequence with everyone.
So they're trying to get 2 push laps in then for Max Gunther. What's Ticktum's first corner? Oh, that's deep, isn't it? That's deep, and that's the lap gone already.
I don't know. Full commitment. Have to wait and see where the sector is. It was quite impressive on the brakes, I have to say. He took a lot of entry speed into that corner. Not much room on the exit.
Well, I wait for the theory there to be disproven. Yeah, look at that. He's up in the first sector. I mean, no one else has had a representative lap
but
time.
22.6 is a strong first sector time there. So I think he just went in there really deep, gained the time on the way in, compromised the exit a bit, but compared to other people, he's still faster than Verline, faster than Roland in Sector 1.
And we saw him in FP2 pushing the limit there and going too deep in turn 1, so clearly he's a man with confidence right now on the brakes.
Yeah, through this stadium section, incredibly slippery through here. You can see the different surface changes going through the sort of shinier part of the tarmac. It's like you're driving on ice. That's why you'll see drivers sliding their way through, and also especially through this long radius final corner. The circuit goes completely 180 degrees back on itself, and you'll see them fighting for control as Ticktum is right on the ragged edge. A 106.538. That's a really strong lap time there for Dan Ticktum, despite what looked to be a bit of a challenging first corner.
Yeah, so Verline's gone a bit slower than him, and Roland has popped up in between them. So that's a strong first effort from Ticktum.
Yeah, really good stuff there for Ticktum, as Evans popped himself up into second quickest. So clearly the changes they made with the setup of the Jaguar team between free practice 2 and qualifying this morning have proved to be beneficial. Buemi's up into the top spot there as well. He was second fastest in FP2 this morning, so continuing that strong momentum. De Grassi currently not able to make the cut by about a tenth and a half or so. We're still waiting for a good lap time to come in for Verline. Gunther's just gone over the line 5th quickest, but we're expecting another one to come in for the German driver.
Verline has done a lap. He's 7th.
I beg your
He's
pardon.
done a 6.8.
Yeah,
so he has done his first lap, but it's just not where you're used to seeing him in the top 4.
Yeah, 4 previous pole positions here for Pascal Wehrlein, so we'll need to pull something out of the bag.
So they've all got a time now to do a cool lap, just bring the tyre pressures and temperature down a little bit. You can see they've all backed out. You need to make a bit of space in the stadium section, and then they'll have time for one last push. So I think Tictum is at the head of the queue with Wehrlein behind. But it's interesting, isn't it? In the top 4 at the moment, in fact, in the top 6, we've only got one of the Porsche powertrains.
Well, we only saw one guy improve into the top 4 in this final attack lap from Group A, and that was Taylor Barnard. So I'm not sure we're going to see anyone improve. It's going to be really, really interesting to see if anyone can find anything to match Sebastian Buemi in the final sector.
Let's have a look at Tictum. No, that's too deep. That's it. That is too much. That is the lap gone then for Dan Tictum. Too deep down at turn 1, and unfortunately his final flying lap will amount to nothing, so he's going to have to hope that there aren't any improvements in this last 30 seconds of the session.
Yeah. Well, Sebastian Buemi was unbelievably quick in Sector 3, and again, from this morning, he had an advantage on the entire field, and he seemed to have continued that through even into this part of the qualifying session.
Yeah, they aren't improving, are they? So far, Rowland's not improved, Evans not improved, Wehrlein, nobody's improved in the first sector.
This is huge drama here for Pascal Wehrlein, former 4-time pole sitter, as we said, quickest man in free practice 2 this morning, and the man that everybody's been looking at is a circuit that he's always gone well at. Let's have another look at what happened then to Dan Tictum as we keep an eye on Wehrlein, who's gone personal best in Sector 2. Just got a...
He did brilliantly well to keep that out of the wall. I have to say, that was a lot of car control on the way in. He was massively overcommitted, didn't he, on the brakes?
All eyes then on Wehrlein as he comes through the Peraltada and aims it for the line. Needs to get himself inside the top 4 to go through and into the dual stages as he comes to the checkered flag. It's not enough. Pascal Wehrlein and Porsche are out of qualifying in Group B.
And Rowland's abandoned his lap. He's coming to the pits.
Not the only driver, I think.
No one improving.
Yeah, no, exactly. I was just about to say, I don't think anybody's going to be set to improve. The timing screens are not really lighting up. Exactly a repeat of what we saw in Group A a few minutes ago. So it looks like the top 4 is going to be Buemi, Tictum, Evans and Oliver Rowland. Sadly, the strategy for DS Penske not working out for Maximilian Günther. Improves in time at the final part of that session in terms of his final sector, but isn't enough to progress forwards and into the duels.
That's a really impressive step forwards from the Kiro team that looked like they were struggling in practice. For Dan to deliver P2, that's a very strong performance, because they looked a little bit on the back foot heading into this session.
And what a huge upset there for Porsche, for Pascal Wehrlein. As we said, you know, the driver who has gone on to win the Mexico City E-Prix on the last couple of occasions has gone on to win the title, but we know how important qualifying is here because overtaking is so difficult. There's not really many big stops to sort of lunge it through on the inside, but Wehrlein's lap there in the final stage of that one just didn't work out at all.
Well, just he must have made a mistake in his first push, and then it looks like everybody is struggling with overheating the tyres after that first push. They have a cool down lap, but maybe they weren't going slow enough to get the tyre back into that peak grip window, and I think here the left side of the car takes so much stress, and that rear left in particular gets really, really hot, and they struggle to get really the grip.
Saksikan AFC U23 Asian Cup 2026 live di iNews Premium Sport.
Jangan tunda sampai besok pagi untuk beramal.
Satu-satunya tayangan kajian Al-Quran yang mudah dipahami.
Sabar dulu, tapi senang selamanya di surga.
Bahwa ujian adalah merupakan pembersih bagi jiwa-jiwa orang-orang yang beriman.
Bersama Ustadz Amir Faisal, Ustazah Inarotul Ain, Cahaya Hati Indonesia, besok siang di iNews. BWF Indonesia Master 2026 live di iNews Premium Sport.
Order to turn around his fortunes this afternoon for the Porsche team. Well then, all eyes onto the dual stages of qualifying that will be on the way in the not too distant future. Taylor Barnard will be going head to head first of all with Nico Muller. We'll have Eduardo Mortara with Jake Dennis, Mitch Evans with Dan Ticktum, and Oliver Rowland and Sebastian Buemi. They're all competing for a spot in the semi-finals and of course the finals thereafter as well.
I should have saved the tyres, I'm an idiot. I should have saved the tyres, I was down and I kept pushing.
And also up to all-wheel drive as well. Well, Buemi saying that he left a bit more on the table. However, the result reflects that he's got pace and performance.
A bit hard on himself there. I mean, look, he carried on pushing in that second lap. He's saying that he should have saved the tyres because he's going to need those tyres throughout this dual phase. So because we've seen the guys struggling to get the tyre temperature, they have to keep the same set of tyres now going into the duals because they won't have the opportunity to do multiple laps. What you have in the dual phase is you have an out lap, a push lap in 350 kilowatts where you need the tyre in exactly the right window. So they're going to have to make sure they keep these tyres on the car. That's why he's being a little bit hard on himself. But you know, maybe that extra push lap also means that his tyres are still going to be in the right window when it comes to his dual because he carried on pushing and increased the tyre temperature during that final lap.
Well, lesson to be learned there for Sebastian Buemi, but great performance for him in the Group B stages of qualifying here in Mexico City. Quarterfinal duels are on the way next. Thank you very much indeed, Nicky. Yeah, looking forward to this one. Quarter-final one coming up then. First of all, it's Taylor Barnard for DS Penske and Nico Müller in the Porsche. Bit of housekeeping for you. Müller has only been in the duels once in the last 12 months, and he's not won one since Misano 2024, which was the race before we saw Taylor Barnard making his Formula E debut. Barnard, we know, he's the youngest pole sitter in Formula E history. He's had great momentum so far this weekend after something of an anonymous start to proceedings in Sao Paulo a month or so ago, and I'm keen to see how this one's going to work out. What way do you see it playing, James?
It's going to be such an interesting one because you've got to go from the 300 kilowatts to 350 kilowatts. You've got all-wheel drive now. You've also got only an outlap to get your tyre in the perfect window, so it's going to be really, really difficult for these guys to make sure they're in that sweet spot of the tyre and absolutely nail their lap. But as you said, Taylor Barnard is a class act. He's been, you know, our youngest ever pole sitter, and he definitely looks like he could have the edge over Nico Müller here.
Yeah, so DS Penske versus Porsche then. First time we've seen DS Penske in the duels this season. Neither Barnard nor Günther were able to make it in the opening round of season 12, but you can see the drivers now out on track at the moment, so they go up from 300 to 350 kilowatts of power in the dual stages of qualifying. They've now got all-wheel drive as well, and of course they only have one build lap, one chance to get heat into the tyres and the brakes, and that's why we're seeing them really sort of kicking on this outlap, because we know how imperative the tyre temperature has been in terms of the overall performance. Günther is under investigation. We're just seeing a notice coming up on our timing screen. We'll get you some more information on that one at the moment. Günther not in the dual stages of qualifying. He was in Group B a few minutes ago and did not make the cut. Either way, his teammate Taylor Barnard is across the line and is heading down towards the first corner. Hard on the brakes he goes into turn one. Looks okay as he clatters over the exit and has a big old bump. Oh, look at how out of shape he gets though on the brakes and into turn four.
That was really out of shape. I'll be impressed if he made the apex and could carry the right minimum speed into there.
What's it like here for Nico Müller? A little bit more sedate going through the first turn there.
Yeah, I think it was a little bit deep, wasn't he? He didn't quite get into that apex as well, so we'll see what that does, but it does a lap time. It doesn't seem to have hurt him.
First sector time for Taylor Barnard, 22.1. Nico Müller responds with a 21.9, so it's advantage to the Porsche. All the hopes now resting, of course, on Nico Müller, a legacy of Wehrlein, not progressing forwards from the group stages of qualifying. So through the stadium section we go, over the different tarmac changes, incredibly slippery through this final part of the lap, and it's all about making as much time as you can through there and losing as little time as possible as you slide your way through the Peraltada. Müller at a bit of a disadvantage though in the second sector relative to Barnard. Barnard's picked it right up in the second half of this lap, a 1:05.075. That's a phenomenal time, the quickest we've seen so far this weekend. Can Müller respond? He's a tenth and a half down in sector 2 as we come to the line for Nico Müller. He's catching though in the Peraltada as he aims it for the checkered flag. It is not enough to out-qualify Taylor Barnard, and he finishes in second position. Barnard, the youngster for DS Penske, is through and into the semi-finals for the first time with that team.
Yeah, that was a very impressive final sector. You can see he made a little bit of a mistake at turn one, but you're arriving there faster in this part of the qualifying than you were in the group phase, so you have to brake a little bit earlier. So to get that right is very difficult. The rest of the lap nailed to perfection by Taylor. That was really impressive. Fastest lap we've seen all weekend.
Yeah, just looking at some super slow-mos. This is going through the right-hander of turn 4 into the braking zone there. Over to quarterfinal 2, I beg your pardon, and it's Eduardo Mortara for Mahindra and Jake Dennis for Andretti. Dennis, the winner from Sao Paulo, the opening round of season 12 of Formula E, versus Eduardo Mortara, the winner of the 50th and the 100th Formula E races. And now we're, of course, at race 150. On the brakes we go, in towards turn 1.
That little dip on the outside of turn 1 is getting deeper and deeper, I think. The grasses, as they're all running through there, you're getting a bit of a rut, aren't you? I think it's going to be an issue as the race unfolds, I think, if they keep doing that.
I think you're right. Be off to the chiropractor at the end of this session, I reckon. Let's have a look for the first sector time for Eduardo Mortara, 22.1, so not quite as quick as we saw from Taylor Barnard a couple of minutes ago, but what is the response going to be crucially there for Jake Dennis? Initially, it looks like Mortara has got the pace underneath him to outperform Dennis. About 0.08 of a second up on the Briton in the first sector alone. Let's see whether he can carry that momentum through sectors 2 and 3 as he comes past the fans in the stadium.
can hear the tyres just chirping away there as he comes through that really unusual surface inside the stadium. Watch the traction on the way up. This is where the Mahindra has been very, very impressive. You speak to other people in the paddock, you talk about the traction that this car's got, and really a 5-1. That's a pretty strong effort from Edo Mortara. It was quicker than what we saw from Nico Müller earlier.
Yeah, not quite as quick as we saw from Taylor Barnard, about half a tenth of a second or so away. Dennis has picked it up in the second sector, and he's fighting the car though through the final corner. You can see him all sort of elbows and angles as he tries to control the oversteer, and he's not able to out-qualify Eduardo Mortara. So the Swiss driver for Mahindra goes through and into the semi-finals. He'll be going head-to-head against Taylor Barnard. That's great for Eduardo and great for Mahindra to try and turn around what was a very difficult start to the season with both of their cars colliding at the first corner. There's Roger Griffiths, team principal for Andretti, one of only 7 people in the paddock to have been at every single Formula E race. Let's have a look at Eduardo Mortara then.
The car looked really well balanced, as Karun mentioned. In this final corner, he just is able to hold it tight, but Jake was just struggling, I mean, to carry the same minimum speed into there.
But he was taking a tighter line, Jake, wasn't he, as well? It seemed like he was trying to go lower down, whereas Edo just let it flow longer distance, but a wider radius, and just gave him a better run to the line, I think.
QF3 then, it's Mitch Evans versus Dan Ticktum. We saw Dan Ticktum really leaving nothing on the table in the group stages a couple of moments ago. Evans picking up a bit of grass on the outside of the first corner, so full commitment from the Kiwi as well. Leading the Jaguars charge, with DaCosta, of course, not making it through from the group stages. Let's see what Dan Ticktum can do in response. This is where he's been so strong on the brakes into turn 1. Looks a lot more calm and controlled relative to what we saw earlier on in qualifying.
I mean, he definitely found the limit earlier on in the group phase, so maybe he left a little bit of margin there.
Yeah, and if you look at the lap time, that reflects it, doesn't it? You know, maybe just being a bit safer, a bit down, but he's coming back as the lap unfolds.
Yeah, 10th and a half away in sector 1 there for Dan Ticktum. Mitch Evans, most semi-final appearances in his Formula E career, 22. He's ahead of Pascal Wehrlein and also Jean-Eric Verne. Could this be another opportunity to increase the gap over those two drivers? Through the final corner we go.
Ticktum was so close to the wall coming through turn 9, carrying a great amount of speed, and I'm not surprised he's caught up a bit.
Yeah, he's picked it right up in the second sector and has built an advantage. 105, 149 for Mitch Evans then. That's pretty much on par with what we saw for Eduardo Mortara a couple of moments ago, but Ticktum now again hanging it all on the line after a conservative start to the lap. Through the final corner then for the Briton. Is it going to be enough to out-qualify Mitch Evans as we come to the checkered flag? It is not. He misses out by 7/100ths of a second. Mitch Evans is through for his 23rd semi-final appearance for Jaguar TCS Racing. Incidentally, a pole today for him would be his 1000th Formula E point, believe it or not, as well.
It's quite impressive.
It is, yeah. Let's have a look then at Mitch Evans' lap. It was nice and composed. That's going through turn 9. Not quite up to the wall on the outside, but you can see, again, fighting the rear of the car as he flicks it into the left-hander. Over then to quarter-final 4, reigning world champion Oliver Rowland for Nissan versus the man who's been on phenomenal form so far this weekend, Sebastian Buemi for Envision. So both these drivers now out on track and ready to start their one and only flying lap then. And well, you have to say, given the momentum we've seen from Sebastian Buemi, he could really upset things here this weekend.
He looks like the man in form. He's been great. And his lap in FP2 was truly stunning. He set the fastest time halfway through the session, and it took a long time for anyone to topple him.
And the group stages, he was a good chunk ahead of anyone else. Rowland, lots of corrections on the way in, quite deep on the entry into turn 5, so that might cost him some time. But when he's just started his lap, it actually hasn't gone as wide as some other people through turn 1. He's a bit more sort of controlled in terms of the speed he carries through there. He's a bit down though at the moment.
Yeah, you saw the car wiggling his hips going into turn 1, didn't you, there for Sebastian Buemi?
But Buemi was really, really strong in sector 2 and sector 3. Sector 1, he was always a tenth or so off the best time. And I wonder if by being cleaner through that first part of the lap, he keeps his tyres in a better window for the last 2 sectors.
Yeah, you can see he was a few tenths of a second away from Rowland's first sector time, but as you say, it could be sector 2 and sector 3 where he's able to build it back. We saw that with Ticktum a few moments ago. Look at the hand positioning on the wheel there for Oliver Rowland. Not the quickest time that we've seen in that session so far, 105.246, but Buemi is catching in sector 2. He's built back 0.2 of a second, and can he close further still to out-qualify him? He's built up more of an advantage as we come through the Peraltada then for Sebastian Buemi. Is he going to knock out the reigning world champion from qualifying as we come to the checkered flag? Sebastian Buemi has done it by over 1/10 of a second. What a phenomenal middle and end to the lap for the former world champion.
And you look at the lap times, you know, Buemi a 5.1, Evans a 5.1, Mortara 5.1, Taylor Barnard's 5.0 from the first of the quarterfinals is still the best one we've seen of anybody of these 8 contenders in the quarterfinals.
Yeah, super impressive. And I mean, the guys who got knocked out, all of them did 1 minute 5.2.
Yeah.
And Nico Muller then, will mean he lines up 5th on the grid. I think with Dan Ticktum in 6th, Jake Dennis in 7th, and Oliver Rowland in 8th.
Yeah, let's have a look at some super slow-mos then for Sebastian Buemi. This is in the middle part of the lap, just coming into the stadium section. We've seen quite a few drivers. You see they flick it into that left-hander. The rear of the car just steps out, doesn't it, as they push the limits of the tyres.
What I like about Buemi's style is that he really drives just under the limit of the car and keeps it in that perfect window through this really challenging slow corners.
Let's have a look here at Oliver Rowland. So we were talking about his car, and we were talking about the steering at the end of the group stage. He couldn't move the car, but you can see, look, he's got his right hand on the top of the steering wheel to almost try and push it down.
Don't know if he did enough gym over the Christmas period, or if there's something wrong with his car.
Get some bulking on the go.
One of the two options there. But I'm guessing there's a small issue with the car. And yeah, earlier on we heard him in the group phase saying that he was really struggling with the weight of the steering.
Saksikan AFC U23 Asian Cup 2026 live di iNews Premium Sport.
Jangan tunda sampai besok pagi untuk beramal.
Satu-satunya tayangan kajian Al-Quran yang mudah dipahami.
Sabar dulu, tapi senang selamanya di surga.
Bahwa ujian adalah merupakan pembersih bagi jiwa-jiwa orang-orang yang beriman.
Bersama Ustadz Amir Faisal, Ustazah Inarotul Ain, Cahaya Hati Indonesia, besok siang di iNews. WF Indonesia Master 2026 live di iNews Premium Sport.
For the last 1%, if you leave that last little bit on the table, you're lacking, you're lacking a 10th or 2, which could be the difference between being on pole or 8th. When you look at how close
it's super impressive.
Stages are.
When you see all those lap times were within 0.2 in the quarterfinals, and they got one shot at doing a lap in 350 kilowatts four-wheel drive. First time they've done it in the qualifying session. Very, very impressive from these talented drivers.
Put us inside the cockpit now here, James. So you see the Air1 and Mortara just sitting there. What's going on at this particular point? What are they talking about? How are they working out the best strategy to get into the semis?
You just have to go out there and repeat. You don't want to be taking too much risk. I mean, unless you know you clearly made a mistake, the main priority is just making sure you go out there and you repeat the performance. Because maybe you could sneak half a tenth, but if you just repeat it, normally you'll find that anyway.
So then, racing for the semi-finals to get underway here in Mexico City. One driver who will not be progressing forwards, though, into those sessions is Jake Dennis, the winner from Sao Paulo a month ago when we kicked off season 12. He's down in the pit lane catching up with Alexa. Jake Dennis then a bit disappointed after missing out on a spot in the semi-finals here in Mexico. And no surprise there at all, given the pace that we've seen from him and also the expectation that was placed on the shoulders of the Porsche Power teams coming into this weekend. 4 previous pole positions, and it will be a different manufacturer starting on pole here this weekend.
Sure, but lining up 5th, 6th, 7th isn't too bad. And but yeah, I think the Porsche powertrain will still be very efficient in the race. But however, moving into this session, we don't have one, but we have a Mahindra, Tom.
We do. Really keen to see what Eduardo Mortara can do. He's the best average qualifying of the season so far.
Yeah, impressive step forwards from both the team and him. Clearly they've been working very hard in the off-season.
Yeah, a lot of consistency in that team over the course of the winter as well. You can see the semi-final lineup there: Mortara versus Barnard, Evans versus Buemi. But Mahindra, again, really keeping things consistent, not only in terms of their driver lineup when some of the teams have changed, but also their personnel lineup as well. Jeremy Calanson moved over to that team a couple of years ago. He's brought along a big engineering team, a lot of members of the Formula E paddock from other teams, and it seems to be working really well. Now we'll see him going into semi-final 1. Eduardo Mortara versus Taylor Barnard. And how is this one going to work out? Taylor Barnard really impressive after a good start to the weekend here in Sao Paulo, both yesterday and then this morning in practice.
Is this a good moment to mention that Taylor's 18 years younger?
Probably is, yeah. You don't say that because Eduardo Mortara celebrates his birthday. 39 he turns in a couple of days as well.
Okay, so almost 18 years.
Almost
17
years.
currently. But yeah, amazing to see the speed of Taylor Barnard, and I think it's going to be very difficult for Edo to beat him in this session. But if he goes out there and he repeats the performance that he did earlier on,
yeah,
very well could.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, let's see how this one is going to work out then. So 350 kilowatts of power, all-wheel drive, as we know in these sessions, and only one chance of a flying lap. Just to give you an idea of where things were sitting in the groups, the quarterfinals, I beg your pardon, a few moments ago. Quickest time for Taylor Barnard, 1:05.
Your time was near identical to Mortara, who won the previous duel. Half a tenth off of Barnard, who won the first duel.
And if we look at the stats, the momentum with Barnard in terms of the win percentage for semi-finals, he won 80% of every semi-final he was in season 11. Penske's last front row Mexico City was actually back in 2015 as well. That was with Jerome D'Ambrosio, who won from pole when the team was known formerly as Dragon a long time ago. Mahindra, meanwhile, haven't been on pole here since 2023, I beg your pardon. Of course, the start of the Gen 3 era with Lucas Di Grassi.
Right, well, let's see what Edo Mortara's got.
So down the start-finish straight we go, in towards the first corner. This could really make or break your lap. As Eduardo Mortara timed it right, that bump on the exit of turn 1 really is getting quite deep, isn't it?
Yeah, I think I'm sure race control will have a look at that after qualifying before the race. But Mortara so far, the car looking really responsive. Just see on the direction change there. When he wants to get the front end to pivot, it does respond. So that's very close to the wall for Barnard. Was on the way out.
Full commitment from Barnard. There was not a millimetre to spare.
I don't know if he closed his eyes, but I certainly did. Through turn 9 we go for Eduardo Mortara. 22 flat for both of those drivers. Advantage with Mortara in the first sector. Through the stadium, though, for the Swiss in the Mahindra.
Yeah, I really hope Barnard didn't close his eyes. He's driving a race car.
I would be, but that's more a me thing than a him thing. Through the final sector we go then for Mortara, and let's see what it's going to be for him. Again, low 1 minute 5, just what we saw in a big snap of oversteer there. That's going to cost him time. Still a 1:05 flat, but Barnard's going to catch up in the second sector, and he might be able to build on that still. And he has a snap of oversteer into the right as well.
Yeah, he missed the apex completely there, so that's dropped him back about a tenth and a bit. So that's going to compromise his line also for the final corner and the run, but we'll see. We saw Mortara have the slide. Barnard just sneaks in. But is it a track limit violation? We'll have to keep an eye there, because I wonder if I think the rear
was really close.
I think the rear was over, but maybe the front right was still in.
No, I lost the rear on the last corner. God damn it! Otherwise, it was perfect.
Yeah, it was a mega lap until that final corner from Edo Mortara. He might be very lucky. He might get through, because I believe that Taylor Barnard was just over the track limits. The limit there is the white line. It's not the curb, it's the white line. If you're all 4 wheels over that white line, your lap time will be deleted.
Well, let's wait and see what the outcome of that one is. There is Taylor Barnard's race engineer.
What a great performance from the two of them. I mean, that was so close. I mean, head to head in a duel like that. This is why I love qualifying in Formula E.
So through, you can see him just not leaving anything on the table there for Taylor Barnard. Meanwhile, we are now over to the second of our semi-finals. Mitch Evans versus Sebastian Buemi on their one and only flying lap then in this session.
That was a really neat run through turn one there for Mitch Evans. So used all the width on the way in, right up against the grass, and that exit as well, no squirm of oversteer. So that was good for him. Let's have a look. Buemi's just started his lap. We'll have a look as the time unfolds. And again, like we've seen in all the previous rounds, Buemi a bit down in the early part of the lap, but we have seen sectors 2 and 3 where he comes really, really strong.
Yeah, not a particularly brilliant first sector from either of those drivers. We've seen a high 21 on occasions in the group stages. We're in the sort of early 22 seconds in that first part of the lap. It's sector 2 and sector 3 where Buemi has been, as we know, with the advantage, and it's pretty even as they come through into the middle sector.
He looks so cool and composed, Buemi. The car is really nicely balanced for him, and he can just, looks like he can carry the minimum speed and put the car exactly where he wants.
Same hardware, of course, both cars. Jaguar powertrain in the back of the Envision. Evans does a 5.3. I'm not sure it's going to be enough.
Yeah, not the quickest time that we've seen so far in the quarterfinals and indeed the semi-finals of the dual stages of qualifying. Let's see what Buemi can do to respond. Has a bit of a snap of oversteer, but I think it's going to be enough. He's catching in this final sector. He comes to the checkered flag, and he does out-qualify the factory Jaguar car. Envision are through and into the fight for pole position, to the delight of Sylvain Filippi, the team principal, as well as the whole of the Envision team.
It looks like the FIA have had a look at Barnard's lap and are happy that he had that front right wheel just on the white line. So at the moment, he will be in the final up against Sebastian Buemi.
Yeah, I'd like to see a replay of that. I mean, look, at worst, Edo Mortara is going to start this race in third place, which is a great qualifying. We saw him have a very strong qualifying in Sao Paulo as well, so that's a great performance from the team. However, I'm sure he would have loved to have fought for pole position.
Yeah, it certainly would have done. Never started on pole position here has Sebastian Buemi. Taylor Barnard, of course, has also never started from pole position here. So different in terms of their careers and, of course, the amount of time they've been going. Sebastian Buemi has been racing here since day one of Formula E and has significantly more experience, but Taylor Barnard, ever since he jumped into an FE car when he replaced Sam Bird midway through the season after the injury that he suffered in Monaco, has been a man to watch, and especially in qualifying. This is Eduardo Mortara's moment through the final corner. So just that big snap of oversteer, and that's what cost him time here, James, wasn't it?
Yeah, just here on the way in, you can see it looks good, and then he just started losing the rear.
There.
And you've just lost your minimum speed all the way through that corner, and there's a 1/10 of a second gone straight away. And that was the difference. Otherwise, it was a phenomenal lap from Edo, and that Mahindra car looks very good.
Yeah, just 2/100ths of a second in it between Mortara and Barnard. Incredibly tight margins.
Yes, we got him.
Inside
We got
the
him.
weighbridge.
10.5. We're mega in sector 3. Really, really good. Keep up the pace. Right hand magic on.
Voice there of Connor Somerville, race engineer for Sebastian Buemi. Those two have been working together for a good number of years. Let's get confirmation, though, of where we're at and who is going to be lining up in the finals. So quarterfinals, you can see Barnard, Mortara, Evans and Buemi progress forwards. In the semi-finals, Barnard out-qualified Mortara, Buemi out-qualified.
Saksikan AFC U23 Asian Cup 2026 live di iNews Premium Sport.
Jangan tunda sampai besok pagi untuk beramal.
Satu-satunya tayangan kajian Al-Quran yang mudah dipahami.
Sabar dulu, tapi senang selamanya di surga.
Bahwa ujian adalah merupakan pembersih bagi jiwa-jiwa orang-orang yang beriman.
Bersama Ustadz Amir Faisal, Ustazah Inarotul Ain, Cahaya Hati Indonesia, besok siang di iNews. WF Indonesia Master 2026 live di iNews Premium Sport.
it's unlikely we'll get the data from that run. The final starts 5 minutes from now. So if you could just let us know a bit more about the turn 1 issue.
I just broke too early.
Guys, let's get the tyres, please. 4-3, rears first. So 4 on the left. We're going to be pulled about 1 minute 10 seconds.
Eso es un tema. Recuerden, amigos, porque bajamos actividades y nos vamos a ver 12:40 en el escenario principal para firma de minutos y que tiene la foto de la obra, porque es el que vale las gorras, los cascos que te entregan en la entrada, que traigan las firmas de todos. 12:40 escenario principal, ahí van a estar los estrellas de Fórmula E firmando a la gente. Y todo el mundo puede los pilotos para que puedan visitar. Su existencia, estamos felices de arrancar el año. Es día de dinero, pero vamos a arrancar.
Thank you, Nicky. Drivers lining up at the end of pit lane then for the finals for round 2 here in Mexico City. You can see this is how we got here from the quarterfinals to the semis to the finals. The upshot is it's the 21-year-old Taylor Barnard versus the 37-year-old Sebastian Buemi. Two drivers at the opposite ends of their career, but both at the sharp end of the grid. Envision with the Jaguar powertrain and the DS with the Stellantis powertrain. And who will be taking pole position here this afternoon for the E-Prix? Well, there are your two drivers, Buemi versus Taylor Barnard then. And, well, not a lot to pick them apart in terms of how they've performed so far in this stage of qualifying.
No, but Buemi seems to have the Sector 2 and Sector 3, really, he's the master of those, especially Sector 3 has been quickest there all day. So it's really going to depend, I think, on his commitment going into turn 1, which we've seen Taylor full commitment so far in the dual phase.
Absolutely. With drivers there you see lined up at the end of pit lane. Buemi will be out first onto the track with his 350 kilowatts of power and his all-wheel drive. What we've seen so far from him in these stages of qualifying is quite an efficient first corner, a little bit conservative relative to some of the other drivers, but he really builds it up in the sort of the second and third half of the lap.
Yeah, he definitely keeps his tyres in the right window, so I think he doesn't overheat the rear tyres like the others that are really aggressive in that first sector, and that seems to, you know, enable him to capitalise on that in Sector 2 and especially in Sector 3.
2 poles so far for Taylor Barnard in his Formula E career. Last season, of course, in Jeddah as well as Monaco. Last pole for Sebastian Buemi, as we were talking about earlier on, was Berlin 2023. Let's have a look. This is the moment we were talking about, though, in the semi-finals a few minutes ago, because there was a bit of concern about his track limits at this final corner.
So you have to keep all 4 wheels on the right of that white line. Whoa.
You can be on the line. I think
Half
the
a
front
tyre.
right. I think the front right. Watch here. I think the rear might have gone over, but I think the front right stayed on. Yeah, there. It's still on the line. So I think that's where he's got away.
That is impressive.
He's just had the front right tyre on the line.
So, round the final corner we go then for Sebastian Buemi, aiming for his first pole position since Berlin 2023, and the first Jaguar-powered pole position since London at the end of season 11 through turn 1. Nice and efficient, nice and clean, exactly what we've seen so far from the Swiss driver this weekend. What will it reflect, though, in terms of the lap time, and what can Taylor Barnard do in response? Down to turn 1 for the Briton. He's got a bit of oversteer.
And a 10th in his pocket.
Yeah, but I think we need to see what happens on the exit there, on the run out of that straight. Well, he still hung on to it, but
It's a good first sector from Buemi. I have to say it's the best one we've seen from him so far, but Taylor Barnard, mega first sector.
Yeah, 21.9 for Barnard, 22.1 for Buemi.
He was a bit wide though at turn 6 in the bottom right of our screen on that box. You can see he was a little bit wider on that apex than Buemi was, so we'll see as we get into the stadium section how that reflects.
Yeah, it might have cost him a bit of time, so through into the final couple of corners we go for Sebastian Buemi, and this is where the lap can be made or broken, and 2 tenths now is the advantage that Taylor Barnard has over the Swiss driver through the Peraltada and to the line for Sebastian Buemi then as he takes a checkered flank at 105.249, but Barnard has got nearly 3 tenths of a second in his pocket. Will it be a third pole position? A snap of oversteer through the final right-hander as he aims for the timing line.
That's track limits. That one has to be track limits. What a phenomenal lap by the young man, but that was definitely further over the line than earlier.
Oh, the disappointment there for Taylor Barnard. If the stewards are going to be looking at that at the moment, he's been classified as the winner and as pole position, and DS Penske think they have done it.
Yeah, if I was the team manager, sporting directors at Envision, as I'm sure Sylvain Philippe's straight on the radio there, I think that's going to be a lap deleted for Taylor Barnard. Unfortunate for him because he did a great job. He's done a fantastic lap time, and I actually think he lost time. It's been deleted, yeah, as you'd expect. He actually lost time, I think, in that final corner. It was a mistake. He went wide. But the rules are the rules. They haven't yet been told, have they?
No, DS Penske think they've all done it. There'll be some communication going on frantically inside those headphones.
We've got the communication on our screen, just so everyone knows that Barnard's lap time has been deleted.
And now Envision are then going to be starting on pole position for the first time in season 12. It'll be Buemi's first pole since Berlin 2023 as well. And the first Jaguar-powered pole since London 2025. Barnard's lap time deleted.
I feel like we're the only ones aware of it.
Yeah, we need to see another replay of that, don't we? And it's pretty clear cut, but let's have another look at it.
Well, it's live on our timing screen.
Which is the same screen that they've all got.
Well, I'd like to see it just so they can show it in the DS Penske garage, if nothing else.
But anyway, what an exciting qualifying. It's been so close all the way through the dual phase. Really incredible.
Yeah. All right, someone needs to tell Phil Charles this. Because he's still... Well, it is a good job. Maybe he's a congratulations because they have done a great job and they have done a fantastic lap.
Yeah, front row of the grid then for Taylor Barnard is what it will be, and you can see confirmation from FIA Race Control. The lap time was deleted for track limits at the final corner, so Taylor Barnard and DS Penske will be lining up on the front row of the grid, but they won't be getting the 3 points for pole position. It will be Sebastian Buemi who lines up, but this is the moment that cost Taylor Barnard 3 points and pole. Wide there for Barnard, just that snap of oversteer mid-corner, pushing the limits a little bit too far, and the 21-year-old Briton is denied his third pole position of his Formula E career.
It's clearly over. Yeah, I mean, it's a slam dunk. It's a slam dunk. I am surprised that nobody at DS Penske spotted that straight away because, I think it was pretty obvious even on the live pictures, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly that. And I have to say also, no discredit to Taylor Barnard, but somewhat fitting as well, the 150th Formula E race, and the man who started in the very first Formula E race, Sebastian Buemi, will line up on pole position for the 36-lap E-Prix this afternoon.